The classroom buzzed with the usual chatter as students shuffled into their seats. The air was thick with the sound of laughter and the scraping of chairs against the linoleum floor. But in the midst of it all, Maya sat quietly at her desk, her small body rigid, her eyes focused on the desk in front of her. She had been trying to ignore the pain, the constant ache that had been with her for weeks, but today, it was too much to bear. "Maya, are you okay?" Mrs. Jensen's voice broke through her thoughts, sharp and questioning. The teacher stood in front of her, her brow furrowed as she stared down at the little girl who always kept to herself. Maya shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her small hand gripping the edge of the desk as she tried to keep the tears from welling up. "It hurts when I sit," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible, the words slipping out before she could stop them. The room fell silent for a brief moment, the hum of conversation around them momentarily halting. Mrs. Jensen looked down at Maya, her face unreadable for a moment. Then she raised an eyebrow, as though unsure whether to believe the words she had just heard. "What do you mean, Maya?" Mrs. Jensen asked, her tone a mix of confusion and disbelief. Maya hesitated, not sure how to explain the pain that had been growing inside her for so long. She had never told anyone before, not even her mother. But today, the ache was unbearable. "It just hurts," Maya said quietly, looking up at her teacher for the first time. Mrs. Jensen blinked, her expression softening slightly, but only for a moment. "Does your stomach hurt, Maya? Are you feeling sick?" she asked, her voice taking on a more concerned tone. Maya shook her head slowly, her eyes downcast once more. "No," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "It's when I sit down. It's in my private area." The words were barely out of her mouth before Mrs. Jensen's expression changed, her eyes widening in shock. She looked around the room quickly, then turned back to Maya, her voice sharp. "Wait here," she said quickly. Her steps hurried as she walked out of the room. Maya watched her go, the fear growing inside her. She didn't understand why Mrs. Jensen had reacted that way. She just wanted the pain to stop. Maya's classmates exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what was happening. No one spoke, as Mrs. Jensen rushed down the hall to the principal's office. Maya sat there, her heart pounding in her chest, wondering if she had said something wrong. The minutes dragged on, each one heavier than the last. She could feel the weight of everyone's gaze on her, even though no one was speaking. She wanted to shrink into herself, to disappear, but she couldn't. The pain, the constant ache, was all she could think about. As the door to the classroom swung open again, Maya looked up, her stomach dropping when she saw the principal standing there with a police officer at his side. Mrs. Jensen was behind them, her face pale, her expression unreadable. The officer's gaze flicked over Maya, then back to Mrs. Jensen. Maya's heart raced. What was happening? Why were the police here? She hadn't done anything wrong. Mrs. Jensen opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. She turned to the officer instead. She said it hurts when she sits, and she mentioned something about her private area, Mrs. Jensen said, her voice trembling slightly. The officer's face hardened as he glanced down at Maya. "Maya, can you tell me what happened?" he asked, his voice stern. Maya blinked up at him, her mind racing, her heart hammering in her chest. She didn't know how to explain what had been happening to her, how to say what she feared was the truth. I don't know," she whispered, shaking her head slightly. "It just hurts when I sit." The officer leaned down closer to her, his gaze softening. "Maya, we need to talk about this. We need to make sure you're safe." Maya's eyes filled with tears, her throat tightening as she struggled to hold them back. Safe? Safe from what? She had never felt more alone in her life. She just wanted the pain to stop. But as the officer took out his phone and started typing something, Maya felt a sense of dread wash over her. Things were about to change, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for it. The officer's presence in the classroom seemed to freeze the air, and Maya could feel her pulse racing in her chest. She tried to keep her eyes on the floor, focusing on the scuffed edges of her shoes, but her heart was thudding so loudly that she felt like everyone in the room could hear it. The officer stood tall, his posture stiff and unyielding, and the principal, who had remained silent until now, looked at Maya with an expression that made her feel as though she was being examined under a microscope. Her stomach twisted into knots as the principal's gaze softened, but only just. "Maya," the officer said, his voice low, but firm. "We need to ask you some questions. It's very important that you tell us the truth. Can you do that for us?" Maya nodded, though the tears stung her eyes, and her throat felt like it was closing up. She had never been in a situation like this before, and she wasn't sure what was happening. She had just said it hurt when she sat, and now the police were involved. She wasn't sure if this was a dream or if it was really happening. "You can trust us, Maya," the officer continued, his voice softer now, though the firmness never left. "We're here to help you." Maya swallowed hard, the lump in her throat refusing to budge. Her fingers twisted the hem of her shirt, and she was unsure how to explain what she had been through, how to tell them the truth about the pain, the fear, and what she suspected had happened to her. I don't know what to say," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible. The officer crouched down to her level, bringing his face closer to hers. "Maya, do you know why you're here?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. She shook her head slowly, her heart racing faster. I just said it hurt," she said quietly, her eyes starting to well up. She wanted to tell them everything, but the words seemed to stick in her throat. The officer nodded slowly, his expression serious, but not unkind. "That's right, Maya. You said it hurt when you sat down. Now, Maya, did anyone do something to you that might have caused this pain? Did someone hurt you?" Maya's eyes darted to the principal, who stood by the door, silently watching the interaction. She felt embarrassed, like everyone was waiting for her to say something that would make this all go away. But it wouldn't go away. The pain wouldn't go away. Her chest tightened, and she finally found the courage to speak. "At home," she began, then paused, her voice trembling. "I don't want to say," the officer's gaze softened, but his tone was still gentle. "Maya, we understand this might be hard for you, but you don't need to be afraid. You're not in trouble. We just want to make sure you're safe." Maya's eyes filled with tears as she looked up at the officer, the words she had been holding in for so long finally bubbling to the surface. It's my stepdad," Maya whispered, her voice shaking. He hurts me. When I sit down, it feels like something's wrong." The officer nodded, his expression serious but filled with empathy. He didn't interrupt her. He didn't ask any more questions. He just listened. The room was still, the only sound the soft tapping of Maya's shoes against the floor. "I don't want to go home," Maya added, her voice barely more than a whisper. The officer straightened up, looking back at the principal, who nodded slightly, then looked back at Maya. "Maya," the officer said, his voice low and reassuring. "We're going to make sure you are safe. You don't have to go back there." The words felt like a weight lifting off her chest. She hadn't realized just how much she needed to hear them until now. She hadn't known if anyone would believe her. "We're going to help you, okay?" the officer said, his eyes softening. Maya nodded slowly, feeling a sense of relief, but the fear was still there. She didn't know what would happen next, but she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe things could change. Maybe she didn't have to stay in that house, where the pain never seemed to end. As the officer stepped away to make a call, Maya sat back in her chair, her small body trembling but no longer from fear. For the first time, she felt like someone was finally listening. The principal came over to her, kneeling down beside her. "Maya, you're very brave," she said quietly, her voice full of compassion. "You did the right thing by speaking up. We're going to make sure you're okay." Maya nodded again, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like maybe things could be different. Maybe she could finally find the safety and peace she had been craving for so long. "I can feel the tension in the room." Maya's confession hung in the air like a storm cloud, its weight pressing down on everyone. The officer moved quickly, his face grim as he spoke quietly into his phone. The principal stood off to the side, her eyes now filled with concern. The silence in the room was almost suffocating, and Maya could hear the faint hum of the fluorescent lights above, like an endless ticking clock. As the officer ended his call, he turned back to her, his face softened with understanding but still resolute. "Maya," he said, his voice calm but firm, "we need to make sure you're taken care of. All right? Maya's heart skipped a beat. For the first time in a long time, someone was looking at her with real concern, not with suspicion or dismissal. "Are you sure you want to stay here for now?" the officer asked, his eyes searching hers. "We can arrange for someone to take you to a safe place, if that's what you want." Maya nodded slowly, her throat tight, but the relief was undeniable. She had never imagined that anyone, especially a stranger, would offer her this kind of help. It had always felt like no one cared. The principal moved closer, her tone gentle but full of authority. "We've already contacted Child Protective Services, and they're on their way," she said softly. "You're safe now, Maya. We'll make sure you're taken care of, no matter what." Maya nodded again, her eyes filling with tears. She had been so afraid of being ignored, of no one believing her. But now, she was surrounded by people who were listening, who were actually paying attention. The officer stepped forward, a kind but serious expression on his face. "We're going to take care of everything from here, okay?" he said. Maya couldn't speak. The words were stuck in her throat, caught between fear and hope. She felt like the world was shifting around her, like the nightmare she had been living in was finally beginning to crack. The principal knelt down in front of her, her voice low and soothing. "You've been so brave, Maya," she said, her eyes filled with compassion. "You've told the truth, and now you'll get the help you need. No one will ever hurt you again." Maya felt a knot in her stomach loosen slightly, though the fear still lingered. She didn't know what was going to happen next, but she knew one thing for sure: she wasn't alone anymore. The officer turned to the principal. "I'll need to speak with you about the next steps," he said, his voice businesslike. "We'll also need to inform Maya's mother about what's happened." The principal nodded, her face hardening with determination. "I'll take care of that," she replied. "We'll make sure everything is handled properly. Maya, you'll be safe, I promise." Maya couldn't help but feel a small flicker of hope. The situation was far from over, but it was the first time she had felt like there was a way out. The pain in her body, the fear in her heart, and the confusion in her mind were all still there. But for the first time, she felt like someone cared enough to fight for her. As the officer and principal left the room to make arrangements, Maya sat still, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked at the door where they had gone, feeling a sense of uncertainty about the future but also a deep sense of relief. She wasn't going to have to face this alone anymore. For the first time, she felt like she could breathe again. The door opened again, and in stepped a woman in a dark suit, her face kind but stern. "Maya, I'm with Child Protective Services," the woman said, her voice gentle but firm. "We're going to take you somewhere safe. You're going to be all right. Do you want to tell me what happened?" Maya swallowed, her hands shaking slightly, but this time, when she spoke, the words felt a little easier. It hurts when I sit," she began, but then she paused, her breath catching in her throat. She wasn't sure if she could say everything, not all at once. But the woman nodded, offering her a warm, reassuring smile. "You don't have to say everything right now," she said. "But we're going to make sure you're protected. You're not alone anymore, okay?" Maya nodded slowly, the tears she had been holding back finally slipping down her face. She had never been so scared, but at the same time, she had never felt so safe. For the first time, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she had a chance at a life where she wasn't afraid all the time. Maybe there was a way out of this pain, and for that, she was grateful. The quiet hum of the office made Maya's heart race as she sat on the cold metal chair, her small fingers curled tightly around the edge. The Child Protective Services worker, whose name was Maria, had escorted her to this sterile room, away from the school, away from everything that felt familiar. Maya tried to steady her breathing, but the fear that had been gnawing at her since the first time she felt that pain when sitting was now overwhelming her. She didn't know what to expect next. She didn't know where she would go. All she knew was that she wasn't at home anymore, and that somehow, that fact both terrified and comforted her. Maria sat across from her, her face calm and patient. "Maya," Maria said softly, her voice gentle but firm, "I know you're scared, but you're safe now. You did the right thing by telling the truth, and that's why we're here." Maya looked up at the woman, trying to hold back the tears that were threatening to spill. She didn't know if she was ready to speak any more than she already had, but something about Maria's steady gaze made her feel like maybe she could trust her. We need to make sure you're okay, Maria continued. We need to talk about what happened. I know it's hard, but you don't have to go through this alone anymore. We're here to help. Maya swallowed hard, trying to find the words. Her mouth felt dry, and the knot in her throat felt like it might choke her. She glanced down at her hands, unsure where to start. I didn't want to say anything, Maya whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. I didn't want anyone to know, but it hurts. It hurts so bad when I sit down. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and raw. Maria nodded, not rushing Maya, just letting her speak when she was ready. Maya, we know it's not easy to talk about this, Maria said softly. But you're very brave. What you've said, it's really important, and it's going to help make sure that no one hurts you again. Maya took a shaky breath, her heart pounding in her chest. She felt her body trembling as she tried to push the words out. It's my stepdad, she said in a tiny voice, the words coming out almost like a confession. He hurts me when I sit down. He does things, bad things. Her chest tightened, and the tears she had been holding back finally came rushing out. Maria didn't flinch or look away. She didn't press her for more than what she could give. She just nodded, her expression full of understanding. Maya, we're going to make sure you're okay, Maria said, her voice firm with a quiet strength. You're safe now, and we're going to get you the help you need. You're not going back to that house, okay? Maya nodded, her sobs coming faster now, her body shaking with the force of the emotions she had been holding in for so long. She couldn't believe it. She couldn't believe that someone was finally listening, someone cared. Maria reached over, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. We're going to take you to a safe place, Maya, she said softly. You'll be taken care of. You don't need to be scared anymore. The words felt like a promise, a lifeline. Maya nodded again, her chest tightening but a small sense of relief starting to spread through her. She wasn't sure where she would go, but she knew she wouldn't be going back to that house. She wouldn't have to endure the same pain any longer. Maria stood up, moving toward the door. I'm going to get the paperwork started, she said. We're going to take you to a foster home for now. You'll be safe there, Maya. They'll help you. Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, feeling the weight of everything finally start to lift. She couldn't stop shaking, but it was different now. The terror that had been with her for so long was being replaced with a faint but growing hope. As Maria stepped out of the room to speak with someone else, Maya was left alone for just a moment. The silence of the room, the cold walls, the unfamiliar surroundings. They felt like a far cry from the house she had just left. But in that silence, Maya could hear something she hadn't allowed herself to hear before. A glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could be safe. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for her to live a life where the fear didn't haunt her. It was going to take time. She knew that. It was going to be hard. But for the first time, Maya believed there might be a way out. And that, for her, was enough to keep going. I was not prepared for the moment that followed. As the door opened, Maya felt her stomach tighten. In walked a man and a woman. The woman had a clipboard in her hand, and the man looked like he had been in law enforcement for years, his calm demeanor masking a certain authority. They both smiled gently at Maya, trying to reassure her that everything was going to be all right. But Maya could feel the tremble in her hands as she wiped away the last of her tears. Maya, the woman said, her voice soft and warm, my name is Agent Roberts, and this is Officer Harris. We're here to make sure you're okay. We know this has been really tough, but we're going to do everything we can to keep you safe. The words were comforting, but the reality of the situation was still hard to swallow. This wasn't just some bad dream. It was real. Maya had never imagined that something like this could happen to her. We're going to take you somewhere safe, Officer Harris added. You don't have to be afraid anymore. You're not alone in this. Maya nodded quietly, her throat tight. She didn't know what was going to happen next, but the fear that had been living inside her for so long had started to fade, just a little. It was hard to believe it, but she was beginning to feel something else: relief. For the first time, she wasn't being ignored, and for the first time, she wasn't being blamed. You've been very brave, Maya, Agent Roberts continued. I know this is all new and scary, but we're here for you. There are people who care about you, and we're going to make sure that no one hurts you again. The words wrapped around Maya like a warm blanket. No one would hurt her again. It was hard to believe, but there was a small spark of hope inside her now. "Do you have any questions for us, Maya?" Officer Harris asked, his tone patient. Maya shook her head, her mind racing with 1,000 different thoughts. But all she could do was look at the faces of these strangers, hoping that they weren't just saying what they thought she wanted to hear. Maya had heard the words safe and help before, but they had always felt like lies, empty promises that no one had kept. But this time, maybe it would be different. Maybe they would actually help her. "Okay," Agent Roberts said, her voice breaking through Maya's thoughts. "We're going to take you to a temporary placement. There are some kind people there, and they're going to take care of you. You're going to be all right, Maya. We won't let anyone hurt you again. Do you understand?" Maya nodded slowly, the tears threatening again. But this time they weren't from fear. They were from something deeper, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice shaky but sincere. "I don't know what's going to happen next, but thank you for helping me." The officers both smiled gently, and for the first time, Maya believed it wasn't a lie. She was going to be okay. She wasn't going to go back to that house, back to that pain. She wasn't sure where she was going yet, but at least for now, she was safe. The officers led her out of the room and down a hallway. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed softly as they walked, and Maya couldn't help but feel like this was the first step toward something new. She wasn't sure how long it would take, but for the first time, she felt like there was a chance for a life where she wasn't scared all the time. She wasn't alone. The officer's car was waiting outside, and as they drove through the streets, Maya looked out the window, watching the world pass by. She felt a strange calm, like the storm inside her had finally begun to subside. Maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. She didn't know how or when, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she could start to believe it. The car pulled up to a new place, and as they got out, the woman from earlier, Agent Roberts, gave Maya a reassuring smile. "This is where you'll be staying for now," she said gently. "We'll check on you regularly, and there are people here who will take care of you." Maya took a deep breath, feeling a little bit of the weight lift off her shoulders. She had no idea what her future would hold, but at that moment, it didn't matter. For the first time, in a long time, she felt safe. She had a chance. And that, for Maya, was enough to make her believe that things could change. The morning light filtered through the window, casting a soft glow on the small room where Maya Saturday. The walls were painted a neutral beige, and a small bed with simple white sheets was tucked into the corner. There was a desk, a chair, and a few small items that made the space feel more like her own, but everything was still unfamiliar. The room was quiet, save for the occasional sounds of other children playing or talking in the hall. Maya had been here for 2 days now, and though the staff were kind, there was still a part of her that couldn't fully relax. She had never been in a place like this before. She had been moved to a foster home, away from the chaos she had known, away from the pain that had followed her for so long. The fear she had lived with for years was still there, lingering in the back of her mind, but there was something else too. A feeling she hadn't allowed herself to feel for a long time. Hope. Maya had never been allowed to hope. Not when the world felt like it was always going to hurt her, not when the people who were supposed to protect her had let her down. But here, in this small room, she felt a flicker of something new. She wasn't sure what it was, but it was there. A small part of her believed that maybe things could get better. Maybe she could be happy again. The door opened slowly, and Maya looked up. It was one of the staff members, a woman in her 30s with short brown hair and a warm smile. "Good morning, Maya," the woman said softly. "How are you today?" Maya hesitated, unsure of how to answer. She had spent so much of her life saying that she was fine when she wasn't, that it felt strange to actually say how she was feeling. But for some reason, in that moment, she found herself speaking the truth. "I'm okay," Maya said quietly. The woman nodded, her smile gentle. "I'm glad to hear that. We have some activities planned for today. Would you like to join us? We're going to do some art, and then have lunch together." Maya felt a pang of hesitation. She wasn't used to being part of a group, and the thought of being around other kids was both exciting and terrifying. But she nodded slowly, her voice barely audible. "I'll join." The woman smiled warmly. "Great. I'll meet you in the common room in a little while, okay? Maya nodded again, and the woman closed the door behind her. Maya sat there for a moment, the weight of her thoughts pressing down on her. She wasn't sure if she was ready to be around others. She had spent so much time alone, keeping to herself, not trusting anyone. But as she sat there, a small part of her felt a little less afraid. She had been given a chance at a new life. A life where she didn't have to hide from her fear, where she didn't have to live with the constant ache in her heart. Maya stood up slowly, her hands trembling a little as she adjusted the hem of her shirt. She looked at the door and took a deep breath. She was scared, but she was also ready to try. She walked down the hallway to the common room, where a few other children were already gathered, talking and laughing softly. Maya hesitated in the doorway, unsure if she should go in, but then one of the girls noticed her and waved. "Hey, come sit with us," the girl called, her voice bright and friendly. Maya smiled shyly and walked over to the table. The girl made room for her, and Maya sat down, feeling the warmth of the others' smiles as they welcomed her. The conversation continued, but Maya stayed quiet, listening, watching. It was the first time in a long time that she felt like she wasn't invisible. For the first time, it felt like she belonged. After a while, the group began working on their art project. Maya picked up a piece of paper and some crayons, unsure of what to draw. But as her hand moved across the paper, she began to feel a sense of freedom she hadn't felt in years. She could draw whatever she wanted. She could be whoever she wanted to be. The walls of fear that had once surrounded her seemed to fade away, even if just for a moment. As the day went on, Maya began to relax more, finding a small comfort in the routine and the company of others. She wasn't ready to forget everything that had happened to her, but she was beginning to understand that she didn't have to carry it all alone anymore. As she sat there, drawing with the other kids, she allowed herself to imagine a future where she could be safe, where she didn't have to live in constant fear. It wasn't going to happen overnight, but it was a start, and for the first time, that was enough for Maya. When it was time for lunch, the staff member who had invited Maya earlier came back to check on her. "How's the art going?" she asked, sitting down next to Maya. "I'm proud of how hard you've been trying." Maya smiled a little, the warmth in her chest growing. "It's going good," she said softly. The woman nodded. "You're doing great, Maya. And you don't have to be afraid here. You're safe. We'll make sure of that." Maya looked up at her, and for the first time, she believed the words. She was safe. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But for the first time in a long time, Maya believed that she had a chance at something better. I was sitting in the small common room when I heard the soft knock on the door. The gentle sound made me freeze for a moment, my heart skipping a beat. I had become so used to silence, to the weight of not knowing what would happen next, that even a simple knock seemed like a call to something unknown. The door opened, and the woman from earlier, Maria, stepped in, her warm smile meeting my eyes as she looked around the room. "Maya," she said softly, "I hope you're feeling comfortable. I just wanted to check on you." Her voice was kind, not rushed, as if she really cared, and that was something I had never experienced before. For so long, people had only looked at me with pity or indifference, but Maria, she looked at me like I was more than just a scared little girl. "How are you doing today?" she asked, her eyes scanning my face as if searching for something. I'm okay," I said, my voice still hesitant, unsure of how to respond. I had spent so much of my life pretending to be fine, to say what people wanted to hear, that it felt strange to be this honest. But for some reason, with Maria, I felt like I could let my guard down just a little. "It's been hard," I added quietly, feeling the truth of it weigh heavily in the air between us. She nodded, sitting down next to me on the small couch. "I know, Maya," she said gently. "I can only imagine what you've been through, but I want you to know, you are safe here. You don't have to carry the weight of it all by yourself anymore. We're here to help you." I could feel the tears start to sting my eyes again, but I held them back, not wanting to seem weak. It felt so strange, so foreign, to hear someone say that to me. No one had ever really cared about whether I was okay, not in the way Maria seemed to. For the first time, I felt like maybe I didn't have to be strong all the time. Maybe it was okay to feel scared, to feel small. I wasn't used to this feeling. "I'm scared," I whispered, my voice cracking. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know where I'll go or what will happen next. Maria placed a hand gently on my shoulder, her touch warm and reassuring. I know you're scared, she said softly, but you don't have to face it alone. We're going to take it one step at a time. First, we're making sure you're safe. And from there, we'll help you figure out what comes next. You're not alone, Maya. You have people who care about you now. I nodded, the weight of her words settling in my chest. It felt like a promise, a real one, and for the first time, I allowed myself to believe it. I didn't know how long it would take, or what the future held, but maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for me to be happy again. Maybe I could have a future that wasn't filled with fear and pain. For the first time, I thought about what that could look like. A future where I wasn't alone, where I wasn't scared all the time. The thought was so new, so different, that I almost couldn't imagine it. But I wanted to. I wanted to believe it. We're going to find the right place for you, Maria said, breaking through my thoughts. A place where you can feel safe, where you can start to heal. It's not going to happen overnight, but we'll be here with you every step of the way. Her words were like a balm to my soul, soothing the parts of me that had been hurting for so long. She didn't promise me that everything would be perfect, but she promised that I wouldn't have to face it alone. And that, in itself, felt like the first real step toward healing. As we talked more, Maria made sure I knew that I could ask her any questions, that she was there to listen. She didn't push me to talk more than I was ready to, but she gave me space to share if I wanted to. And for once, it felt like my voice mattered. It felt like my pain mattered. After a while, she stood up, her smile never fading. I'm going to give you some time to rest and get settled, she said, her voice still gentle but filled with care. And if you need anything, you just let us know. You're safe now, Maya. You're safe. I watched her leave the room, and for the first time, I felt something inside me shift. I wasn't sure what it was, but it was a feeling I hadn't known in so long. Hope. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe that maybe things could change. Maybe I could start over. Maybe I could find peace. And as I sat there in the quiet of the room, a small part of me believed that, with time, I would. Maybe this was just the beginning, but it felt like something real, something good, something I hadn't thought I deserved. But now, I wasn't so sure. Maybe I did deserve it after all. The days that followed felt like a blur for Maya. Each morning, she woke up in the same room, surrounded by the same calm atmosphere of the foster home, but each day was a step into the unknown. The staff was kind, but Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she was still walking on shaky ground, unsure of what was to come next. Yet, with each passing day, a part of her began to settle. She didn't know if it was the routine, the meals that were always on time, or the gentle presence of the staff, but something about this new life felt safer, more stable than the one she had left behind. She still carried the weight of the past with her, but for the first time, she didn't feel like it was suffocating her. That morning, Maria had told her there was a meeting that afternoon with the caseworker who would be handling her case. It wasn't something Maya was looking forward to, but she had learned to accept that there would be difficult conversations along the way. As she sat in the small waiting area, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her shirt, she couldn't help but feel a little nervous. She wasn't sure what was going to happen during the meeting, but she knew it would be important. Maria entered the room just as the clock on the wall ticked past 2 o'clock. Her usual warm smile was there, but her eyes were filled with a kind of understanding that made Maya feel like she wasn't the only one going through something difficult. Are you ready, Maya? Maria asked softly. Maya nodded, though she wasn't sure if she was ready, but she wanted to try. She followed Maria down the hallway to a small office at the end of the corridor. Inside, there was a man sitting behind a desk, looking at a few papers. When he saw them enter, he stood up and offered a gentle smile. Maya, I'm Mr. Henderson, he said, extending his hand. I'll be working with you on your case. Maya shook his hand, though she felt a little unsure. She wasn't used to adults who cared about her well-being, not in the way he seemed to. It's nice to meet you, she mumbled, her voice soft. Mr. Henderson nodded and gestured for her to sit down across from him. How are you doing today? He asked, his voice calm. Maya hesitated for a moment, thinking about how she really felt. She hadn't been asked that in a long time. I'm okay, she said slowly. I'm getting used to things here." "That's good, mister," Henderson said. "It's a big change, and it's perfectly normal to feel unsure. But you're safe now, Maya. We're here to make sure you have everything you need to start over." Maya nodded, her hands in her lap, feeling a little more at ease with the kindness in his voice. "I know this is hard," he continued, "but we need to talk about what happened, so we can make sure that you're taken care of. This is important, but we'll take it slow, okay?" Maya swallowed hard, but nodded again. She didn't want to talk about it, but she knew she had to. "Okay," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Mister?" Henderson leaned forward slightly, his eyes gentle. "Maya, I want you to know that everything we talk about stays private, but we need to hear your side of things, so we can make sure you get the help you need. You don't have to go into all the details, but we need to know what happened." Maya felt the knot in her stomach tighten, but she pushed through it. It started when I was younger," she said quietly, her voice shaking a little. "It was always hard to talk about. My stepdad." She paused, her breath catching in her throat. Mr. Henderson waited patiently, giving her the space she needed. Maya took a deep breath. "He would hurt me. He would do things that made me feel scared, and I didn't know how to stop it. But when I got older, the pain got worse, especially when I sat down. That's when I started to tell people. I didn't know what else to do." Her words hung in the air, the weight of them sinking in. Mr. Henderson didn't rush her. He just sat quietly, nodding as if he understood. "Thank you for telling me, Maya," he said after a moment. "That must have been very difficult for you, and I want you to know that we are going to do everything we can to make sure you're safe. The people here are going to protect you. You don't have to worry anymore." Maya's chest tightened again, but it wasn't from fear this time. It was from relief. She hadn't realized how much she had been holding in until now. The tears that she had been fighting to keep inside finally broke free. But they weren't just tears of sadness. They were tears of release, of finally letting go of everything that had been weighing on her. Maria, who had been standing quietly beside her, stepped forward and gently placed her hand on Maya's shoulder. "You're doing great, Maya," she said softly. "You're very brave. This is the first step, and we'll be with you every step of the way." Maya nodded, wiping her eyes. She still wasn't sure about the future, but for the first time, she felt like there was a chance for something better, a chance for safety, for healing. She didn't know what was ahead, but at that moment, she knew she didn't have to face it alone, and that was enough. I could feel the weight of the conversation lifting from my chest, but it didn't make it easier. It was hard to explain what had happened, to put the words together without feeling like I was drowning in the memories. But something about the way Maria and Mr. Henderson listened to me made it feel like I wasn't just telling my story to a room of strangers, I was finally telling someone who cared. The day passed slowly, the quiet weight of the conversation hanging over me as I sat in the small room, my thoughts drifting between the past and the future. The future felt uncertain, like a fog I could hardly see through, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that, for the first time, I had a chance to find my way through it. That night, as the foster home settled into the quiet of evening, I found myself lying in the small bed, staring at the ceiling. The world outside the window was dark, the stars barely visible through the city lights, but I felt like I was finally starting to see a little light of my own. I wasn't sure how long it would take, but I was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could be happy again. Maybe the pain wouldn't follow me forever. I wasn't alone anymore, and that made all the difference. A few days later, I met with my caseworker again. This time, it was just me and her. Maria had stepped out, giving us space to talk. It wasn't the first time I had sat down with someone to talk about my past, but it felt different this time. For the first time, it felt like I wasn't being forced to say things. It felt like I was finally allowed to choose how much I shared, when I shared it, and how it was going to change things. "Maya, my caseworker," Miss Clark said, her voice gentle but filled with a quiet authority. "I know it's been a difficult time for you, but I want you to know, you're doing great. I can see the progress you're making. You're already stronger than you think." I looked up at her, a little surprised. I wasn't used to hearing those kinds of words. "I don't feel strong," I said quietly. my voice barely above a whisper. "I feel like I'm just starting to understand what happened, what it means, and how I'm supposed to deal with it." Miss Clark nodded, her eyes soft with understanding. "You don't have to have it all figured out right now. And you don't have to go through it all by yourself. That's why we're here. You're not alone, Maya. We're here to support you as you figure out what comes next." Her words were a balm to my soul, though they didn't erase all the fear and confusion I still felt. I had spent so much time surviving, so much time focused on just making it through the day, that I had never really thought about what it would take to heal. But now, sitting in that small office with Miss Clark, I realized that healing was a journey. It wouldn't happen overnight, but it was happening, and that was enough. "We're going to work together, Maya," she said. "There are things we can do to help you get the support you need, and we'll make sure you're placed somewhere where you feel safe. You're going to have the chance to live your life without the fear you've been carrying." The thought of a life without fear, without the constant tension in my chest, felt like a dream. I wasn't sure how it would look, or if I would be strong enough to take the steps needed to build it. But hearing Miss Clark say those words made something inside me stir. I had never allowed myself to imagine a life without pain, but now, for the first time, I was starting to picture it. "I'm not sure I'm ready for all of this," I said, my voice trembling. "I don't know if I can trust everyone yet. I'm not sure how to feel safe." "It's okay to take your time, Maya," Miss Clark said, her voice kind but firm. "You don't have to trust everyone right away. And it's okay to be scared. What matters is that you're taking the first step, and that's the hardest part. You're here, you're asking for help, and that's something to be proud of." I nodded slowly, her words sinking in. For the first time, I felt a little more confident that I wasn't stuck in the past. I wasn't trapped in that endless cycle of fear and pain. I was starting to move forward, slowly, but forward. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur, but when I went back to my room that evening, I sat by the window and looked out into the night. The stars were faint, but they were there. And in that moment, I believed that my future was like those stars, distant, maybe, but there, waiting for me to find my way. I wasn't sure what it would look like yet, but it was mine, and that was enough. I woke up early the next morning, the sun just starting to peek through the curtains, casting a soft golden glow on the small room. I lay there for a moment, not moving, just staring at the ceiling. The night had been quiet, the kind of silence that made it easier to think, but also harder to forget. I still had moments where the memories would creep in, where I would feel the pain in my body as if it were happening all over again. But they were becoming fewer. Each day was a little easier. The foster home was beginning to feel like a place where I could breathe, even if it was hard to fully trust it yet. I wasn't used to people treating me like I mattered, but Maria, Miss Clark, and even the other staff members had made it clear that they cared. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. I swung my legs off the bed and stood up, stretching as I felt the stiffness in my muscles. For a moment, I almost felt normal. I wasn't sure what that meant yet, but it was a strange comfort. After I got dressed, I made my way to the common room. It was still early, but there were a few kids already sitting at the table, chatting quietly, eating breakfast. I hesitated at the door, unsure if I should join them. It felt so new, so different, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to be a part of something yet. But then, one of the girls, Emma, looked up and waved at me. "Hey, Maya, come sit with us." Her voice was friendly, not forced, and something about it made me feel like I wasn't invisible anymore. Maybe it was time to try. I walked over slowly and sat down beside her. The table was small, but it felt full in a way that wasn't overwhelming. There was laughter, casual conversation, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't an outsider. Maybe these kids didn't know my story, but in that moment, it didn't matter. They were letting me be a part of something. I didn't have to pretend. After breakfast, Maria came into the room, smiling as she walked toward me. "How's everything going today, Maya?" she asked, her voice soft but full of warmth. "Okay, I guess," I said, the words feeling strange on my tongue. "I'm just trying to get used to everything." "That's perfectly normal," she said. "You don't have to have it all figured out right away. We'll take it one step at a time. I'm proud of how far you've come." Her words made something warm stir inside me, something I hadn't let myself feel in years. Maybe I was stronger than I thought. After a few more minutes of quiet conversation, Maria stood up. "I have some paperwork to finish up, but if you need anything, I'll be in the office. I'll check in on you later, okay?" I nodded, and as she left the room, I couldn't help but feel a little lighter. Maybe, just maybe, I was starting to believe that I could be okay. I spent the rest of the morning with the other kids, joining in their activities, talking, laughing. It felt strange, but good. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just surviving, I was living. At lunch, when we sat together in the cafeteria, I found myself feeling more comfortable. I laughed at something one of the boys said, and it wasn't forced. It was real. That afternoon, I had another meeting with Miss Clark. It wasn't the first time we had sat down to talk, but this time, I wasn't as nervous. I had started to trust her, to believe that she had my best interests at heart. She sat down across from me, her usual calm demeanor in place, but her eyes soft with understanding. "Maya, I know you've been through a lot, and I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help you," she said gently. "You've already shown so much courage by speaking up, and I'm proud of you for that. But I want to know how you're feeling. What can we do to make this transition easier for you?" I thought about it for a moment. I wasn't sure how to explain everything I was feeling. "I don't know," I said honestly. "It's hard. I don't know who I can trust yet, and sometimes I still feel scared, but I think I'm starting to feel like I might be okay." Miss Clark smiled softly, nodding. "You're doing great, Maya. It's okay to be scared, and it's okay to take your time. But I want you to know that we're here for you. You're not alone in this." Her words felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. I had spent so long feeling like I was carrying everything by myself. But now, for the first time, I felt like I didn't have to do it alone. We spent the next hour talking more about my options, about what the future might look like. It was still uncertain, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what was ahead. As I left the office, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. It wasn't a magical solution, and it wasn't going to happen overnight, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was moving forward, and that was enough. That evening, as I lay in bed, I thought about everything that had happened in the last few weeks. The fear, the pain, the uncertainty. I had carried it all for so long. But now, with each passing day, I felt like I was shedding it, little by little. And for the first time, I let myself hope for a future where I could be happy again. I had been in the foster home for a few weeks now, and each day, I was starting to feel like I might belong. The fear I had carried with me for so long was slowly starting to fade, but it wasn't gone yet. It still crept up on me in the quiet moments, in the stillness of the night, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel completely consumed by it. I wasn't sure how much time it would take to fully heal, but I was starting to believe that healing was possible. The days were getting easier, but the process was still slow. Some days were better than others, and some moments, I still felt a tightness in my chest that wouldn't go away. But the more I interacted with the other kids, the more I realized that I wasn't alone. They didn't know everything about my past, but they didn't need to. They didn't judge me, and they treated me like I was just another person. That was something I wasn't used to. That afternoon, as I walked into the common room, I noticed that a few of the other kids were sitting together, working on a project. They were all talking and laughing, but when they saw me, they smiled and waved. It was something so simple, but it made me feel like I wasn't invisible anymore. I walked over and sat down with them, unsure of how to jump into the conversation. But the moment I sat down, one of the girls, Leah, turned to me and smiled. "Hey, Maya, want to help us out?" she asked, her voice warm and inviting. I hesitated for a moment, but then I nodded. "Sure," I said softly. As I worked with them, I realized how much I had missed this feeling, being part of something, being included. It felt like something I hadn't experienced in a long time. For the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider. I didn't feel like I had to hide or be ashamed of who I was. These kids didn't know my history, but they didn't need to. They accepted me for who I was in that moment. Later that evening, After the other kids had gone to bed, I found myself alone in my room again, staring out the window at the night sky. The stars were barely visible, obscured by the city's lights, but they were there, scattered across the darkness. I thought about everything that had happened, all the pain I had endured, and the uncertainty of the future. But now, looking out at the stars, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't sure how long it would take, but I was beginning to see a future for myself. For so long, I had just been surviving, getting through each day, trying not to think about what had happened. But now, for the first time, I felt like I had a chance at something more, something better. The next day, I had another meeting with Miss Clark. She had been checking in with me regularly, making sure I was adjusting well to everything. I still wasn't used to someone caring so much, but I was starting to appreciate it. When I walked into her office, she greeted me with a warm smile and motioned for me to sit down. "How are you doing today, Maya?" she asked, her tone soft but attentive. "I'm okay," I said, the words coming more easily now. "I think I'm starting to get used to things here." "Miss..." Clark nodded, her expression thoughtful. "That's really good to hear. I know it's been a big change, but you're doing great. I can see how much you've grown in just these past few weeks." I felt a little surprised to hear her say that. "I don't feel like I've changed," I said quietly. "I still don't know what's going to happen next." "That's okay," Miss Clark said gently. "It's normal to feel uncertain. You don't have to have everything figured out right away, but you're here, and that's a huge step. You're allowing yourself to heal, and that's what matters most." Her words were a comfort, though the uncertainty still lingered. But I had learned that it was okay not to have all the answers. I didn't need to rush the process. I could take things one day at a time. "We'll keep working together, Maya," Miss Clark continued. "There's still a lot we need to figure out, but you're not doing it alone. We're going to help you through this, and we'll make sure you're in a safe place." I nodded, feeling a sense of calm wash over me. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was starting to build something for myself. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was enough. As I left her office, I walked down the hallway with a sense of purpose that I hadn't felt before. I wasn't sure where the future would lead, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. The journey ahead would take time, and I would have to face some difficult things along the way, but I knew I wasn't alone anymore. I had people who cared about me, people who wanted to help. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in a long time. The fear that had followed me for so long was still there, but it was no longer the loudest voice in my head. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. And in that moment, I allowed myself to believe that things could get better. I didn't know how, and I didn't know when, but for the first time, I believed it could happen. I woke up feeling different that morning, as if the heaviness in my chest had lifted just a little. The world outside was still the same, with the hustle of the city, the routine of the foster home, and the buzz of everyday life. But inside, something had changed. It wasn't big, but it was enough for me to notice. I had been here for months now, and though I had experienced some moments of doubt, some moments of fear and uncertainty, I had begun to see a future where I could be happy, where I could feel safe, and where I could be free from the past that had haunted me for so long. I had come a long way since the first day I stepped through the door of the foster home. That first day, I had been terrified, unsure of what was going to happen to me, unsure if I would ever be able to escape the weight of everything I had gone through. But now, as I got out of bed and stretched, the air around me felt lighter. Maybe it was because I had started to let go of the fear. Maybe it was because I had started to trust the people around me. Maybe it was because, for the first time in my life, I had been given the chance to heal. I wasn't perfect. I wasn't fixed. But I was getting there. The door opened, and Maria stepped into the room, her warm smile greeting me as she came in. "Good morning, Maya," she said softly. "How are you feeling today?" I hesitated for a moment, but then I smiled back, the first real smile I had given in a long time. "I'm okay," I said, my voice steady. "I think I'm starting to feel better." Maria nodded, her eyes bright with understanding. "That's really good to hear," she said. "You've made so much progress already. I'm proud of you, Maya." Her words warmed me more than I expected. It wasn't just the kindness in her voice. But the fact that someone had noticed how far I'd come. She didn't just see me as the broken girl from the past. She saw me as someone who was growing, someone who was moving forward. That was something I wasn't used to. "Thank you," I whispered, feeling a bit of emotion rise in my throat. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that it was mine to shape. Maria left the room to give me some time to get ready for the day. I gathered my thoughts as I got dressed and made my way downstairs. The other kids were already at the table, eating breakfast and chatting. I had gotten used to this routine, and for the first time, it felt normal. I wasn't a visitor anymore. I wasn't just passing through. I was part of this home. As I sat down with the others, a sense of calm washed over me. We didn't talk about anything deep or meaningful that morning. We joked, we ate, we enjoyed the moment. It was simple, but it was the kind of normal I had always wanted. After breakfast, I went to my room to get my things together for a meeting with Miss Clark. The caseworker had been checking in on me regularly, helping me with the paperwork for my future, making sure I felt comfortable with everything. As I sat in her office, she asked me how things were going, how I was feeling about everything. For the first time, I didn't just answer with, "Fine." "I'm starting to feel like I belong here," I said. "It's not perfect, but it's better than it was. I feel like I'm finally starting to heal." Miss Clark smiled, her eyes soft with understanding. "That's wonderful to hear, Maya," she said. "It's not an easy journey, but you're doing great. You're taking the right steps." I nodded, though I still wasn't sure how everything would unfold. I had learned not to expect everything to be fixed all at once. Healing was slow, and I had to remind myself that it was okay to take my time. As the meeting continued, Miss Clark talked to me about the next steps in my case. She explained how we would start looking into permanent placements, how she would help me transition into a new family when the time was right. I wasn't sure if I was ready for that, but I knew that it was something I would have to face eventually. It was part of the process. As I left her office, I felt a mix of emotions. The uncertainty was still there, but it was no longer overpowering. I had people who cared about me now, people who were helping me build a future. That evening, I found myself sitting in the common room, the soft hum of conversation around me. The other kids were busy with their activities, laughing and chatting, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was part of something. I wasn't just a girl lost in the background anymore. I had a place here. The past was always going to be a part of me. But I was learning to live with it, not to let it define me. I had the chance to create my own story now. As I watched the kids interact, as I listened to their laughter, I realized something that I hadn't allowed myself to believe before. I had a future, and for the first time, I believed that it could be a good one. It had been a year since I first stepped through the doors of the foster home, a year since my life had begun to change. The pain of the past had not completely vanished, but it was no longer the weight that held me down. The fear that had once consumed me was still there sometimes, but now I was learning how to live with it, how to face each day with the understanding that I had the strength to keep moving forward. I had come a long way, and though I wasn't sure exactly where the road ahead would lead, I felt ready to face it. That morning, I woke up to the soft hum of the city outside, the sounds of the day beginning. I lay there for a moment, reflecting on everything that had happened, how far I had come, how much I had grown. I wasn't the same person who had arrived here, scared and unsure. I had learned to trust, to let people in, and to believe in myself again. After breakfast, I sat in the common room, my usual spot by the window. The sun was shining brightly outside, and for the first time, it didn't seem like a reminder of the darkness I had once felt. I could feel the warmth of the sunlight on my face, and it made me realize that there was still so much to look forward to. I had spent so much of my life just trying to survive, just trying to get through the days without thinking too much about the future. But now, I could feel the future beginning to take shape. I wasn't exactly sure what it would look like, but I knew that it was mine to shape. I was sitting there when Maria came in, her smile as warm as ever. "Maya," she said gently, "how are you today?" I looked up at her and smiled back, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. "I'm doing good," I said, my voice steady and confident. "I'm finally starting to feel like I'm in control of my life again." Maria's eyes softened, and she nodded. "I'm proud of you, Maya. You've come such a long way." I smiled, but inside, I felt a rush of gratitude. I never thought I'd get here, I said quietly, but I'm starting to believe that I can have a future. A future where I'm happy, where I'm safe. You deserve that, Maria said. You've earned it. And you're not alone. You've built something here, and we're all here to support you, no matter what. Those words meant more to me than she could ever know. I had spent so much of my life feeling like I was on my own, like no one really cared. But now, I knew that wasn't true. There were people in my life who cared, people who would help me build the future I deserved. That afternoon, I had another meeting with Miss Clark. This time, we talked about the next steps, the possibilities for my future. She explained the options available to me, whether it was moving to a new family or staying in the foster home longer. But for the first time, the decision felt like mine to make. I wasn't just a passive participant in my life anymore. I had a say. I had choices. You've done so well, Maya, Miss Clark said, her tone full of approval. You've shown so much courage. And now, we can focus on what comes next for you. You're in a place where you're safe, and we can help you move forward, whatever you decide. I nodded, the weight of the decision heavy on my mind, but I didn't feel afraid. I felt empowered. I was ready to choose the next step in my life. After the meeting, I walked outside, the sun setting over the horizon. The sky was painted with shades of pink and orange, and I stood there for a long time, watching the world change around me. I had changed, too. I had come so far from the scared girl who first walked into the foster home. I had learned to trust again, to hope again, and for the first time, I truly believed that I could have the life I wanted. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. I still had a lot to figure out, a lot to heal from. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't alone, and that made all the difference. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool evening air fill my lungs, and I knew that whatever came next, I was ready. The future was mine to create, and I was no longer scared to face it. This powerful Black story takes you on an emotional journey of resilience and healing. Maya, a young girl who has faced unimaginable hardship, begins her path to recovery in a foster home, where she discovers the power of hope, trust, and community. Through this moving Black story, we follow Maya as she learns to overcome the trauma of her past, find a sense of belonging, and step into a future full of possibilities. As Maya grows and adapts to her new environment, she begins to realize that she is not defined by her past experiences, but by her strength and determination to move forward. This Black story shows how the power of kindness, support, and patience can change a life, reminding us that healing is possible even in the darkest times. As Maya's journey unfolds, this Black story demonstrates the importance of having people who believe in you, people who help you discover your worth and potential. Maya's journey is not just a tale of survival, but of transformation, showing that even after facing hardship, it's possible to embrace a brighter, safer future. This Black story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the belief that no matter where you come from, your story can be rewritten with hope and support.